What just hatched this morning was 25% Leonis, 25% Rutheni or Ruthens, and then 50% Corm, so hybrids. I've changed my mind on inbreeding as well. Basically, when I actually went down the rabbit hole and changed my mind on everything.
What is your very first reaction to hearing the phrase hybridizing snakes or hybridizing lizards for that matter? What do you think of when somebody takes two separate species of reptile and breed them together to create a hybrid crossbred species? Now, I think for many of us, the initial reaction is sort of this knee-jerk frustration and anger and no, don't do that. But in today's episode, we break down why that may be the future of reptile keeping and herpetoculture and why it may actually be the ethical thing to do. Now, for many of you thinking, how is it possible that combining or crossbreeding species together could be the ethical thing to do? Well, I'm going to let you listen to the episode, but today I'm speaking with Liam Sinclair of the Reptiles and Research podcast, and we discussed domestication. What is domestication? Are we participating in domestication unwillingly, or is it something that's actually happening kind of all the time in herpetoculture, or is it something that we actually have to physically participate in or intentionally participate in for it to actually happen? How do we define domestication, and how do you use hybridization of species to work towards a goal of making a better pet animal? There is so much in this conversation. I feel like it's one that's going to create a lot of anger in some people and probably some frustration and also just some amazing talking points. So let's jump into the episode. I know you will at least find it entertaining, if not enjoy it. If you're someone that's a little bit more open-minded, you are probably going to enjoy it. If you're someone that's sort of more set in your ways, like I used to be and Liam definitely used to be as well, then this may be frustrating. But I'll let you tell me in the comments. You can let us know what you think. Let's jump into the episode. The following is a paid advertisement for True Chroma by Faunalux. Did you know that most of the LED lights on the market for reptile keeping are designed for human eyes and not for reptile eyes? Reptiles perceive their visual world in a completely different way than we do because they have a fourth cone, a fourth visual receptor that allows them to perceive light in the ultraviolet spectrum. The Faunalux True Chroma Spot LED is the world's first lamp to utilize trademark reptile vision technology to cater to our animals. With a wide visible spectrum output, high color rendering, and natural proportions of essential UVA1 light, your animal experiences richer color, improved awareness, and better welfare. It's that simple. True Chroma is laboratory tested, used in zoos, built to last, and they fit right into your standard ceramic screw-in fixture. It's precision lighting designed for reptiles, birds, and other exotic pets. True Chroma by Faunalux, educated by nature. Head to fauna-lux.com for more information. All right, Liam, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully your editor doesn't make me look bad.
Yeah. I'll have to send him a private message after to say, make this guy look good. For those that don't know, Liam edits the podcast. So he's the guy behind the scenes that does all the work for me because I just do not have time. So without Liam, the podcast would not exist. So I have to thank you for that.
No worries.
So I think today, I've just been thinking about this all morning before we recorded, and you have gone through a massive evolution, just as we all have through our keeping careers. And I think you and I kind of started on the same page as far as ethical keeping and trying to do better in that front. And slowly you've evolved. And today's episode, I think, is a massive detour from where you started. Probably the most significant like left turn somebody could take, I think. And so everybody's going to want to hear how that unpacks and the story behind that. But maybe just to give people the hook of the sort of the pinnacle that you've hit just within the last couple of days, you've had a clutch of eggs hatch. Can you tell us what that clutch of eggs is? You don't have to go into crazy detail. We'll save that for a little bit later. But just for those who are like, what are we talking about here? What did you just produce?
So I didn't produce it. This is Ellie's clutch. This is Ellie's clutch technically, okay. But I have also bought things on the same vein. So things are blended in this house anyway. It's all one same at this point. But what just hatched this morning, I started recording a video this morning, was 25% Leonis, 25% Rutheni or Ruthens, and then 50% Corm, so hybrids.
And that's when we're talking about hybrids, you're talking about two different genuses as well. It's not just Lamprepeltis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so some people might go, what the hell did he just do, and how is that even possible that Liam has done a hybrid like that, or Liam and Ellie, like you said, it's kind of one of the same at this point. So let's backtrack. I would love to know for you, like, where did this start, and because I remember me and you talking about hybrids years ago and thinking that was a horrible idea and this is not good. And it's sort of we lumped it in the same with the overbreeding of morphs and sort of the disregard for the quality and the health of the animal as well. And that's kind of all the same basket. Obviously, you've had a massive shift. So where did that start?
I think in sort of like the early years of me starting keeping, you join all the Facebook groups, and I took a break from Facebook groups, and I just kind of stepped away from it for a while, and I just obviously me and Ellie met, and me and Ellie got together, and then we would just chat to ourselves and like work things out, and when you take yourself away from the Facebook groups and where it's so culty, and like Ellie's one of these girls. Do you girls listen to like these murder podcasts and like I'll wake up at 3 a.m. and someone's screaming or something and I'm like, what's going on? And it's like this murder podcast that she's fallen asleep to and I'm freaking out. So it's like that. And she was listening to a podcast about cults, and it was going through like a tier list of like all the things that define a cult. And some of the Facebook groups that I was in, I was like, this is a cult. Like it fits it. I don't mean like slightly, I mean like to a T. Like it's like cult mentality. And it's not just individual Facebook groups. I think most Facebook groups, when people get this sort of like control and dominion over these groups, they become like cult leaders. And it's like if you don't toe the party line to say, you get shunned, and it's like shun the non-believer, right? So I think when I stepped away from all of that, I left a lot of groups, and I just started thinking about things. A lot of the things that you get told and that people are so adamant on, I just started to think about it, and I don't think a lot of it makes sense. The whole thing of like, oh, hybrids are bad because it's going to ruin everything and things aren't going to be pure. And as I've like just started researching things, I'm like, nothing's pure anyway. So that's the thing I'll probably go into. But then I used to be hardcore into like locality. And locality doesn't exist. It's literally just, I'll go into that. But I was like, locality isn't what I thought it was anyway. And then everything just started falling apart. So rather than accepting these things and just everyone just gets their pitchforks and it's like, yeah, because I'm supposed to feel this way. I just spent like a few years just thinking, and none of it, as I've thought about it, and I'll detail like the way that I think about things in this episode, I just started tearing it apart in my own mind. And I don't think it like when it stands up to scrutiny, it falls apart for me. And I like to pride myself if I can be convinced that I'm wrong, I need to change my mind. And I've changed my mind.
Yeah.
This is basically as simple as that, really. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I mean, I've had these moments in the hobby as well where I'll be like, I'm all about the natural looking animal and the natural locality and all these things. And then I remember when I bought my jungle carpet python, I was specifically looking for a high yellow black ratio, like a nice high yellow. And what do you think a high yellow jungle carpet python is? It's not a wild looking jungle carpet python. It has obviously a base of wild jungle carpet python, but when you look at a wild one, they're almost like a goldy brown. It's not a bright kind of lime yellow or super bright yellow.
Line bread.
Exactly. And that basically is a morph. I'm like, okay, well, where do I sit on this? Or even if you were the purest of pure wild type breeder, when you have a clutch of eggs, don't tell me you're not going to look at the clutch and pick the best ones that you think look the best for the next breeding pair you do. Whether it's maybe not doing an inbreeding, but you're gonna constantly, because we are aesthetic beings. We're constantly going to look for things that we actually like. You're not going to just pick the dirty brown ones that don't look good. You because you want to be passionate about it. You want to find the ones that you enjoy to look at. And part of that is you're going to naturally line breed in a way, even if you are somebody who's super focused on locality and native wild type, like the it looking like the wild.
They'll do it for you anyway. You can't control it. So this is some of the realizations that you're exactly right. These are some of the realizations that I've had when I started like reading like really, really like old like racehorse breeding books, studs and stuff like that. And some of the guests that you had on talking about the leopard geckos, dragoon geckos and things like that. And also I'm about to say in this episode nothing that a lot of the breeders that everyone respects in this industry also behind the scenes will message me after I make a video and like, you're 100%, you're exactly right, but I just don't want to say it publicly. So everyone knows what I'm saying is true. So we'll go into that. I'm not going to say names. I'm not going to call them out because they purposely said they didn't want to say it out loud. But big names that everyone's like, oh, they're amazing. They would never do these things. And everyone's like, yeah, they're just, yeah. So yeah, so I started looking into things, and I started looking at like old bird breeding books, rodents. I've got like a really old book that's called Cult of the Budgerigar, and
Hmm.
it's so good. It talks about the selective breeding we should do on the budgies and stuff, and they don't even know about the like deleterious recessive alleles and the genetics of what they're doing, but the selective process that they used to call it constitutional weakness. So if anything's a bit sickly or it's got like poor conformation and like body shape or it's got an underbite, or they would just cull it. They would just hardcore cull it, kill it, move on. And that's they were making selections without knowing the genetics. And that's what we've done for thousands of years. That's who we are as like humans that have always kept and bred animals. We've always applied that artificial selection. It's the process of domestication, right?
Hmm.
So we also talk about there being like genetics that makes you predisposed to being like an animal keeper. Well, also a part of that genetics is some level of like applying domestication, right? Because
Yes.
we domesticated ourselves as well as we domesticate everything else. So all we're doing now, and what I've realized we're doing, is we're slowly moving down the lines of domestication. And as I started looking into domestication, I bought like domestication textbooks and things, and I started really looking into it. And I've had guests on the Reptiles and Research podcast that me and Ellie have spoken to that also talk about domestication. And we're domesticating everything, whether you do it purposefully or subconsciously, but you can't control it. So going back to what you said about that selection, even something as simple as uh like egg cutting. If you don't cut eggs and it doesn't hatch, first screening, first level of selection, done. We had a baby in the clutch that hatched. It hatched out, got out all the way at the egg, but we opened the clutch and it was dead.
Hmm.
So something about maybe it had a heart defect or something. It strained itself, worked too hard to like hatch out, and then it was like dead. So one level of screening, I didn't have to call that. I didn't have to make any sort of selection. It selected itself. So they will apply a level of selection against themselves, whether you like it or not. Even if it's a case of, let's say you've got something that's a tricky to get eating, and normally they would start on lizards or something, and everyone talks about establishing a species, and it's like, well, I did really well. I got like 25% to start on pinkies. Okay, so they said, we're going to make a selection ourselves. We're going to die because we won't eat pinkies. A level of selection done straight away.
Hmm.
And then everything goes after that, gets more and more selected without any selection made by you, whether they will eat or not. It's like they die or survive. So survival and captivity itself is a level of screening for selection. So you can't control it. That will happen. And then even the things of like, let's say one is really like flicky and shitty and bitey, and you're like, I just don't like working with it. Let's say it's like a Cali King that's always wrapping itself around you, and it's just a pain to work with, and you've got a really nice pair that you're like, do you know what? I really prefer working with these. I'm going to sell that one because I don't want to work with it because it's a pain. As a selection made there. So you subconsciously you're picking the nice ones that you want to work with, and eventually making nicer babies and making babies that do better in captivity with humans. And then I start looking into stuff with like chickens and stuff. And the chickens, during a process of domestication, I learned this one of our previous guests, was that they have a change in adrenal response to humans specifically. So that they have a change in a stress response to people as a
Hmm.
level of selection. So we don't know whether that's happening in the snakes. Now, our previous guest told me that they actually found a specific gene, and it was found in like many different things, from goldfish to birds and everything. So who knows whether it's in reptiles? But then even then, you look at plants, and plants don't have that same gene, but we still have domestic like varieties of plants. So maybe that doesn't really apply as a measure of domestication. That can be one of them, right?
Hmm.
So there are so many things that we're doing subconsciously, whether you like it or not, that is a level of domestication. So we're racing towards domestication, whether you like it or not, whether you're a purist that likes wild stuff. You will be having animals in your collection, your care, that when you breed them, you're applying all that selection that takes them further away from what that wild being ever was. Let's say you got something that is like a lizard eater, and you're like, oh, I can get them to start on rodents. Oh, I can get them to become less stressy and less flighty and more likely to be held and blah, blah, blah. You're already just taking that line away from what it is. And that's all it is. The word of today is lines, because that is all we have is lines. Nothing else matters. It's lines. People think that, so I'm getting well into this. I'm going, blah, 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 blah. So stop me when you want to stop me. But
Yeah, go for it.
all we have is lines. People think that like, oh, you got corn snakes and you make lines out of that, or like the evolution of humans, that we had humans and then our families of like become of lines out of that, right? But actually, logically speaking, there has to be like a progenitor, a parent, a progenitor, like going back. So there was a line from you, Dylan, all the way back to that sort of like weird fish thing that crawled out onto the shores.
Hmm.
By definition of like inheritance, you have to have like a progenitor going all the way back to that. So the percentage chance that you exist is not just because of the percentage chance of like sperm meets egg, but also all those thousands of individual animals that survived to adulthood. What are the odds of like making it from that neonate to that adult, and then getting to breed, and then the odds are crazy, right? But that is a line. The only thing that matters is line. So people think that you get like corn snakes, or you get like a type thing, and then you get like a line coming from it, but it's just a line all the way through, right? And nature doesn't make these hard boundaries of like, oh, we call it this, this, and this, and this. So the old species concept of like, oh, it can either breed together or it can't. And if it can't, it's a separate species. And if it can, then it's the same species. That doesn't really hold true in most taxonomy today. It's more like mitochondrial DNA and like geographic barriers. And there's a lot more that goes into it, right? But you can tell that a goldfish and a giraffe are very different, right? They're not going to be making babies anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you got things like the North American colubrids that are so tightly, especially within like the Lampreypeltini tribe, where it's like Pantherophis, the corns and stuff, the kings and the like gopher snakes and stuff. They're so closely related that everything's at 100% fertility. They're so closely related that if you applied those old species concepts, it would be the same species.
Why are corn snakes Pantherophis? Sort of throw a random tangent. Like, why aren't they Lampreypeltis? Do you know? Is there a morphological difference in them?
Well, they do differ because they are like more semi-arboreal. They've got more of a skinny neck. There are like the scalation's different. There's all these things that we apply, but then taxonomy is only humans trying to understand the natural world and put like labels on things that we can like mark it all down, catalog it, and understand the world, right? Mother Nature doesn't give a shit.
Yes, yeah.
That's
where we run into
like
problems
putty.
when we try to define things.
Yeah, and it works for the most extent, but like Mother Nature doesn't care whether it's a Cali king and a desert king, and that there's an intergrade. It's just putty where the genes of the environment will twist it and pull it in different directions to suit that environment. And a lot of that comes into like inbreeding and outcrossing and breeding in general. There's so much to go into it. And then I've changed my mind on inbreeding as well. Basically, when I actually went down the rabbit hole and changed my mind on everything.
Yes. Okay. I mean, it's fascinating. I think the point that you're making of we are crawling towards domestication, whether we like it or not, is a good one. And I think if you're a breeder who's focused on wild type animals, and let's say you're even working with wild caught pairs, those offspring are still going to be tilted towards captivity because of the conditions. Like, you'll never be able to work your way. There's nothing you can do in captivity to replicate the wild enough to make sure that the babies are being selected for a wild environment. So if you're breeding them in captivity, we're tilting the entire gene pool towards captive keeping, whatever that means, whether it's more docility or eating on a more variety, whatever it is. There's a million different things, and there's nothing you can do. The only way, if you wanted to be a wild type keeper, was to catch a wild animal and keep it, but don't breed it. That's the extent of being a wild keeper. If you're doing any breeding, you're working towards domestication. But I imagine that you have the pushback on the word, that D word, domestication, is probably pretty extreme. To people.
Yeah, I mean, domestication, like there is a line, right? Because there is no definition of like, right. So you can say like as a gradient, right? How I envision it is like, okay, there's the process of domestication. I would challenge anyone to argue the fact that these aren't on the ladder, on the process, the road to domestication. Okay, so we get to the point. Okay, so it's from on the road to how domesticated to domesticated fully. So it's like at some point there is a point we have to accept that it's domesticated, and then beyond that point, it's like how domesticated is it, right?
Yes.
And I think reptiles, especially some of the snakes and stuff, are racing towards that. So back to the point when you were saying about like we can't do anything about like the screening and the selection. That also led me to realizing that locality doesn't exist. if you're someone that's in the States and you can go out to a backyard and you can like go grab an animal and you can take it in and breed it, and then you can have gene transfer going between your backyard and your collection. Okay, cool. That locality doesn't exist. If you are someone like me and you that gets like a locality of carpet python from Australia, right? As soon as we start breeding it, locality is out the window because you have a locality, right? And I always imagine it as like lots of different like colored balls on a screen. You have a founder effect as soon as you take a selection of, let's say, take 4 animals out, but you're going to take the nicest ones. It's going to be the ones that survive, that will eat the things you'll give them. It'll be the pretty ones, and it'll be the ones that generally just apply a level of screening to themselves, right? Okay, so there's a shift there. And then as you go forward, you're like, okay, the nicer ones. Okay, so a personality type doesn't represent a locality. Oh, we're going to concentrate it and make, your really vibrant yellow one. Okay, that's way different. Doesn't represent the wild locality anymore. Okay, they eat really well on like captive rodents, lab mice. Okay, that doesn't represent the wild locality anymore. And suddenly, what you have isn't locality; it's just a line. Mm-hmm. It's just a line. And for the vast majority of localities, that scenario holds true. It's exactly what's happening. It's no longer a locality; it's just a line. And then what's a line? It's a bucket of characteristics that you have bred a population in a direction towards, sometimes inbreeding to concentrate those traits in a direction that you want and amplify them until you have uniformity within that population, that bucket of animals and those traits. And then you've got what you've got. So let's say you take your jungle carpet, the high yellow, right? What's the difference between that line and someone that's bred a line for a morph? There is no difference.
Exactly.
You've got so far away from the locality, it doesn't exist anymore. It's literally just a line.
The only thing it would be is it's almost like a morph of a locality in a way, like a caricature.
Yes.
It looks like the animals of that specific locality, but there's nothing about it genetically besides it's, to use a morph term, the paint job, right? It's like it looks like it. Maybe the same body shape, maybe there's some morphology things, but other than that, that's as far as it goes.
Yeah, and I got to the point I was like, it's just no different. So how can I be like so into this shifted, changed locality that I'm like, I'm really into it, but then I'm like, oh, morphs, that's disgusting. Like, it's no different, especially when it's polygenetic. So rather than it being like a monogenetic, where it's like a single gene, like let's say, I don't know, like albinism, right? A simple recessive like that. Okay, it's polygenetic, but it's the same thing. The polygenetic aspects of what they had to do to make that yellow more concentrated in your jungle carpet, right? That's no different from someone that starts making a line and using polygenetic aspects to make it like really vibrant. So do you know Ozzy Boyd? He made those really, really like orange dream royal pythons.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a level of monogenetics on top of that, but the polygenetics of making it that really extreme orange was him line breeding. So what's the difference between his orange dreams and your high yellow carpet? To me, there's no difference. It's just a line.
Now, I think it's probably worth highlighting as well with the morph, because we had, I think, or at least you had some really good criticism of the morph, trade, we'll call it. And so maybe like, do you want to just quickly lay out like where does that go wrong and what were some of those issues? Because when we talk about deleterious alleles and things like that, most of that still does apply to issues with morph breeding. I mean, I guess you could also throw in the keeping conditions of the animals as well. So it's not that you've shifted over to a point where you're saying let's just go morphs. Whatever they were doing in the big rack systems was totally fine. It's more so the principles that allow people to select animals that they like, you've realized are actually ethical. It's just how you do it. Like, I don't know, maybe you want to expand on that.
It's two separate things. So the concept of lines and the polygenetics and the paint job is entirely separate from the methods people want to use to achieve that, right? So we're breeding stuff, but it's all in like massive vivariums and stuff. So we're doing for the same things, but it's just a different method, right? But they weren't caring about quality. It was like, it has the gene, so it's the same, and it's not the same. The behavior is different, and behavior is another selection that is important. We are quite hardcore on like, if a baby comes out rattling and spewing musk everywhere, off you pop. We'll just sell it, move on. And this clutch that hatched today, literally like I was holding the camera up with a dead one. I was like, oh, this one didn't make it. That's fine. And as I'm holding it up, there's another one that's trying to get onto my hand. And it's like, hello. And I'm like, this is meant to be a sad moment. Get off. So
Yeah.
that unafraid, and like I can just pick them up and they just sit in my hand. There's not a chance of them tail rattling or anything. So that is a big difference of like a selection so they would make it for us. Then there's the feeding that comes after. They can be amazing behaviorally and like really timid and great, but if they're so lackluster and so timid that they won't even eat and they have no desire to eat, then that's not good either. So
Yes.
you have to be selecting everything at once.
Yeah, and I think that's a big difference. I mean, this reminds me of my conversations that I've had with Rebecca from Dragoon Gecko, is the amount of animals that she has that make their way all the way up to be a breeder is, I forget the number, was it like 5%? It was something insanely small. So,
Yeah.
which is different from the hastiness that happened in the morph boom, which anybody, even if you're a morph person and you breed morphs, you probably have seen that as well, where people are breeding animals really quickly. They're actually throwing out all the characteristics other than color, even to the point where I remember watching Barchek hatched this morph. I forget what it was. It was like an orange. Maybe someone can put it in the comments, like tangerine or something. And he's like, I've hatched these before, but every time they hatch, they die. So we're really going to keep a close eye on these and try to get them to adulthood. And of course, they died in a few weeks. It's like there's no connection to the fact that that morph has so many problems with it. It's never going to live. Like you're not going to be able to breed out the maybe organ issues or whatever it is, because everything's kind of thrown into the basket at this point. But there was that hasteness and speed of trying to be the next morph person, like the next morph, that people were not thinking about the health and especially the behavior. Like you said, I think maybe you kind of glossed over that quickly, but you're actually selecting for animals that are less afraid of humans. So that's a huge difference in just making something that looks cool.
Oh, 100%. So in my opinion and Ellie's, our philosophy is the behavior and the success of the animal in terms of how willingness it is to eat anything. I mean, if you can produce an animal that'll eat anything. I mean, Arcadia just released those sausages today, right? If it'll eat those sausages as well as everything else, you can hand that baby off to someone. They can feed it whatever they want. Right, because it's that versatile. So these are things that are important. And then like good steady growth rates, health is the most important thing. And then once you've got that bedrock, that foundation, the color can come in last. The color is one of the easiest things to do.
Yeah,
especially if it's monogenetic. That's just one cross.
Yeah,
but you want to concentrate those positive traits and that conformation so much that it's so dominant in the genetics of that line that when you outcross to bring in some good stuff, yes, you come out a little bit and you lose some of that, but it's so concentrated here that you still get a lot of it in that F1 cross when you make that. So that's the inbreeding. Everyone says that inbreeding is like, and I believed it, and I've said it for so long, that it's like always bad, it's always negative. Actually, you can inbreed to have healthier animals.
Can you expand on that?
So you have things called deleterious recessive alleles, right? And in the same way that you have like a simple recessive, like albinism, right? That allele, rather than just making it albino, it will do something like it's got a dodgy heart, it's got like a weird lung, it's got like a kink in its spine, it's got a weird pyloric valve to like parts of the gastrointestinal tract, it's got bug eyes, it can't swallow properly. It could be anything, right? Could be any, because everything is so polygenetic. There's so many genes doing different things at once, and then you have epigenetics to play into how those things even express those genes. So there's so much to it. But to simplify it, you have deleterious recessive alleles that, when you become homozygous in the population, become expressed, and that's the negative, right? So when people say always outbreed, it's not because it gets rid of those things. It's because it covers it up and masks it, and it stops it from being expressed. So that's why the heterogeneity of a population in the wild is often not always better, because it means that a lot of these deleterious recessive alleles stop being expressed and they get covered up, and the dominant alleles make them more adaptive. So you can have a disease that will go for a population, and if they're really closely related, they can either be really good at dealing with that disease or be horrifically unequipped because they haven't got any sort of like variability in their toolbox, and they just go downhill, right?
Yeah.
But it depends. So as much as you can amplify those bad deleterious recessive alleles, there can be good traits that you amplify and concentrate through inbreeding. So what you have to do is basically apply heavy selection when you inbreed, make clever decisions, and then when you inbreed, the goal is to basically be culling and culling and carving out to remove those deleterious recessive alleles, to eliminate all the bad things, whilst concentrating the good things to the point where you get like an overwhelming majority as good, and you hedge your bets against the bad, right? Because you're never going to eliminate it completely. That's impossible. Let's not be silly. But when we outbreed, it's all still there. It's just covered up.
Yes.
So you basically have a premise of like, I'm going to inbreed to make it express, so I see it and I can cull it out. So the very first thing that you should do if you're going to breed anything is inbreed it straight away. Not because you have to inbreed the entire line, but because you inbreed sibling to sibling, daughter to father, just to see what comes out, right? Because if you do that cross and you inbreed straight away and they all come out horrifically kinked or with some problem, then you know that your original animals have got things that they're carrying as like recessive hets, if you will, that would continue down that line, and you would never know it's there.
Yeah.
So someone in the future will inherit your animal from that line and someone else's and put them together and get horrific kinks and stuff. So what you should do is you should do test pairings straight away. Try and drag it to the surface, see what's there, then make decisions. Maybe you get rid of one of those animals, or if it's that bad, you scrap both and you start again with new pairs to start your breeding program. But when we're just breeding blindly, just random animals, well, I think they're unrelated, so they're good. Doesn't mean anything. It just means that you don't know what's under the hood.
Right. Yeah. So the premise of the goal is essentially stabilizing your breeding gene pool to the point where you're fairly confident that you're not going to pop up any strange recessive thing. And then I guess at that point you can, to use your putty example, if you want to change color, for example, let's say you have all those behavior characteristics and everything that you want, but now you want to start working with the morphology or the phenotype, then that's when you would start outcrossing in. But then you're kind of having to go back to I guess if you have an outcross line that's good and stable, then you have another line that's good and stable. You can cross them and start, cooking.
Yeah. So basically what you want to do is like, you want to like be years down the line where you've like culled so much. Like, cull doesn't have to be like you kill it. You can just say, so with that way that I define things is a hard cull, which is kill it, or a soft cull, which is just sell it or rehome it. So culling can just be you're just removing it from your breeding program. Mm-hmm. So you can like rehome those to pet only homes, non-breeder if you want to list it as that, or you can just sell it if it's fine. Because some of the things that are a cull for me that I don't want is simply something that someone else finds acceptable. Like some people comment on some of the videos that I've made that, well, that's ridiculous. Babies are like that. We're not all babies. I just want to get it so hardcore that it simply is so uniform that we get like amazing pets. Mm-hmm. But for some people, they're like, typical baby king snake behavior, for example. So that's my cull, but they might have a color they want, and they're happy with the crappy behavior that I don't, but they want the beautiful color of the animal. Yes. So I can have, if we have an animal that's absolutely stunning, but it behaves awful, off your pop, don't want it. Mm-hmm. And I have done that. I sold some babies to the local shop today. Not hybrids, Callies, that I was like, they're beautiful. And I tracked their lineage back and I found out that Neil Little was a guy in the UK, imported their grandfather from the US who has like fresh blood and stuff. So I paid a lot of money for it. And then it got to me and it was just little bitey little beep, 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 beep. So I was like, off you pop. In my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you have an animal and then the animal leaves you in a better position than it left me, then you got it in. For example, it was ambiguous. I didn't know the health status. I disease screened it. I know it's clean. And as long as it leaves me in a position where it's been screened and it's clean and it's like more certain than it left, I'm like, fine. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
No one else screens it.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. So why don't do you want to lay out kind of the goal, like what you would see as a goal of, like, let's just say breeding programs in general, whether you're breeding hybrids or you're working towards this. Basically what it is you have fully bought onto the idea that we are domesticating these animals and you're taking that message and putting it into a program. So whatever that means to anybody, it doesn't mean you have to hybridize or whatever, but for you and Ellie, like what is your goal in the breeding program? If you are a regular listener to the podcast and you want to help support the production of the show, make sure you head to patreon.com/animalsathome. For as little as $3 per month, you can help me pay for the service fees that go along with editing and producing the show. And for as little as $5 a month, you have early access to the episodes. Thank you very much for your support. Enjoy the podcast.
To make the best pets possible. Okay. You're basically working towards making breeds, right? So what is a breed? If you look at like a cat or a dog or anything, or a goldfish breed, there's goldfish breeds, bird breeds, anything. It's basically just a basket of characteristics of traits that are concentrated into a line that you get uniformity and you get similar results each and every time, right? And that's breeds. It's in a nutshell, really put simply. So you want to work towards establishing breeds in reptiles, really, as a part of domestication, where there can be something that is made out of hybrids, because most of domestication, hybrids have been a part of domestication. Pigs didn't come from one species of pig. Bovines, cows didn't come from one species of cow. Sheep came from multiple species. Like, hybridization is a part of domestication. It always has been. It's been a part of what we do. Stop me from going on tangents, but I'm going to go on a tangent now. I'm going to slow myself down because this topic I get really excited by, and I start going bam, 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 bam. So I'm going to slow it down. But the clutch that came up today, we had a conversation whilst we're looking at it. They are the sweetest little things. And I think we had a conversation. It was like, because it's been taken to a corn, something that's been so hardcore bred in captivity in the UK, so many generations in, you've just taken so many steps forward by crossing it to a corn snake, right? And that's what they've been doing for thousands of years with domestication. They'll have something like, oh, I like the traits of this, but this brings it closer to the goal. This, and they end up having like a basket of traits that is what you want, that it's its own thing anymore. It's not this and this and this. So you want to get away from, oh, it's 25% this, it's 25% that, it's 25% this, and you just call it like it's a imperial, or it's a whatever name you name the breed, right? So the way I see it is, I'll say it now, like I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just saying this is why my opinions have changed as I looked at what other industries, other cultures, aquaculture, aviculture, they're all saying the same thing. This is what has already been figured out before herpetoculture, and now we're kind of thinking we can reinvent the wheel and like learn it from scratch, when we just need to look at what they've done and they've already figured out for us, right? Yes. The breeding is already laid out for us, and many people already know that. But many people don't. They think we can reinvent the wheel and say something different. So, and I start to realize we're starting to move towards breeds anyway. People just don't realize it. You look at the designer green tree pythons. What is that? Well, they're crosses and the hybrids, but in set baskets of characteristics and set lines that they value and they buy from each other. And they call it designer, but what is it really? It's a breed. Herpetoculture is so resistant to adopt normal like words that is accepted in every single other culture, whether it's a goldfish or it's a bird, whether it's like this or that, as a fish, it's mammals, you would call it a breed. But reptiles, like no, because we're different, because we're sexy and exotic. It's not a breed, because that's boring and that's domestic. But that is what we're walking towards. It's domestication. You can't not domesticate. It's impossible.
Right. Yeah. I'll just say you could look at the ethical side of it and say, does it make more sense to work with animals and produce offspring that eventually generations down the line handle captivity better than animals that don't? And so that's the question. Like we always ask that question on the podcast. Is it even ethical to keep these animals in captivity? So I guess it would be a pretty obvious statement to say it is walking the ethical line, we'll call it, or the line of morality, to keep animals that don't do well in captivity. But if you can do something that works towards them actually thriving in captivity, that's a different story. And I think one question that would come to my mind is, I think partly is the reptile hobby, at least the sector that we are more involved in, is this like naturalistic keeping this wild type setting, and having a man-made breed in those settings maybe doesn't jive for people. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's because of like a lot of us want to be like different, and one of the things that draws us towards herpetoculture is because it's like, oh yeah, I'm exotic and I'm different, and like you and your boring cats and dogs, I'm exotic. So I'm Steve Owen, I'm a zookeeper, and it's kind of like and that's how I felt when I came from working in like for the World Parrot Trust and zookeeper and having a degree in like exotics and stuff. I was like, oh no, morphs. Oh, that's I want to be wild because it made me feel like I was doing something different, right? That's
Mm.
how I felt. Maybe not everyone feels the same way, but that's how I interpret a lot of people's behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's and even when you think of something like a hamster that you would go buy from a pet store, obviously that's a domesticated hamster. It's it's like again a caricature of what the wild version looks like in nature. But most people keep a hamster in like kind of a basic way with a wheel, and it's very like colorful tubes and those sort of things. I don't think the reptile hobby needs to go that way, right? Like if you're breeding an animal that is like as you said the best pets possible, that doesn't mean you have to go down the colorful tube keeping. We can still keep these animals because I think part of enjoyment of keeping is setting up a natural environment. The idea is
Mhm.
that these animals do well in those environments, and we're not just making like the newspaper bottom and a hide as you see a hamster, for example, or a goldfish with a kind of a goofy water ornament.
Well, I mean, domestics still need enrichment. Like we went to a zoo. Me and Ellie went to Odense Zoo, and they have all their farm area, and their ponies and stuff had so many kongs and feeding, and these like strips of paper of like plastic thing that the pony would have to walk through, and there's so much enrichment. They require so much enrichment, no matter what it is, whether it's a dog or a cat or like guinea pigs or ferrets. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just that people associate domestics with like not needing anything, and that's
Mm-hmm.
a falsehood in of itself. But I see it is the hybrid stuff is okay. I'm talking about domestication. What I want to do more than just simple. What does this and this make? Oh, the F1, cool. Let's make another F1. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just seeing what the possibilities are, right? What you can get to express because someone else can see what you've made and be like, I can see a line out of that. I'm going to take it a different direction. Um, I want to see it like you've got like a basically another line, another breed. And I see a lot of the wild type stuff just becoming breeds because you look at everyone's like, oh, we're scientific, right? But then the taxonomy changes, and what does the hobby say? Nah.
Yeah, yeah. No
Like
thanks.
you watch, like even like especially the old heads, they're like, oh, the hobby, the scientists keep changing their minds. We're just going to keep the hobby species. I'm like, okay, cool. So we're not changing it and shifting it because of science. Why? Because we don't want to lose the lines that we've got, right? So, okay, so they're not scientific, they're just hobby baskets, right? And if the taxonomy is moved so far away that that's not even a thing that hasn't been for decades and never will be again, what is it now? Basket of characteristics that we want to keep the same to preserve that basket of traits is just becoming a breed.
Yes.
And there are
Now,
lines within the big basket of breed, but it is becoming a breed. There's like Jalisco milk snake, like that's gone, but we still keep it around. Or there are many examples of things that don't technically even exist, but we have them and we keep them as we want them because we want it. So whether you want to determine it's a breed or it's wild, but the taxonomists are wrong and it's going to swing back, what it is a line.
mhm.
And it's always a line, no matter what it is you're doing morph, you're doing generic, you're doing locality, you're doing wild type, hybrids, lines.
Yes. And it's interesting when you talk about domestication in general, because when we talk about domesticating animals as humans have, a lot of times there's many different purposes for why we might domesticate, whether it's an ox pulling a cart or a horse, pulling a plow, pigs for feed and cattle for feed. Most dogs have originally had some sort of role or duty that they had to do. It's only in the last maybe 100 years that we've started breeding dogs for pets, right? To be like a lap dog or that sort of situation. Now, do you think there are, like, when it comes to breeding reptiles as breeds and working towards a breed, do you think the best pet is really the only option for our goal? Or do you, like, I mean,
The
I don't
dog
know
could
what
be
else
wherever
you,
you want to be.
yeah, okay.
For example, of when the video comes out of the cross that made the clutch cut today, the female, you just hold it like when you have a snake, you just hold it like that, and it will just you can just weave it around your fingers, and it'll kind of just move around your hand, slowly just tongue flicking, and it's like, all right, how you doing? It's just kind of chill. And then you have some sort of things like milk snakes are so funny for it, where they're just like treadmill, treadmill, treadmill. You can't, and it just lunges that way, and it's like swings and it's hanging, and you got to like lift up again. It's just so active. Well, we had two spaniels. One passed away now, but in this house we had a working spaniel and then a show spaniel. behaviorally, energy wise, so different. One is like bah, 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 and the other one just wants to sit on your lap and go to sleep. But you think about what can you do with these snakes? Well, there's an animal that just relaxes and wants to sit in your hand, and I can just look at it and enjoy it, and it's not work to hold it. And then you got the one that's like bam, 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 and then perhaps that one is like really good in a vivarium because it's doing stuff and you want to watch it do loads, and the other one's like chill, good to chill out with, and maybe it doesn't do much in a vivarium. Or you reach an optimal where it's chill in your hands, but it's still active in the vivarium. But then you end up with like almost like working lines. It hasn't got a job, but like dogs did. But there is the working line energy, and then there's the chill one. And you can start to see how you can breed different things for different things that you want. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fascinating to think. I remember there was that guy still on YouTube who was using what was it, an Argus monitor for like hunting rats. I don't know if it ever worked, but he was like using it as a rat dog basically. And I have I guess I should follow up on that to see if that's still a project. But potentially maybe there's like actual working jobs for some reptiles. But I think for the most part you're going to be sitting somewhere in like the realm of making them good for captivity and making them a better pet. So then for you guys, as you said, the pet is the top goal, and then basically at the very bottom of that list is how it looks and the color. But obviously that does play a factor. So maybe we could talk about the actual pairing, that the clutch that hatched this week or today, and what are you going to look for phenotypically? Like, tell us about the process. Like, where did these animals come from? Remind us of what it is. But then, do you have a vision in your head of what you'd like this ultimate pet to look like as well?
Well, and that's Ellie's thing. What she wants to do with her clutch is what she wants to do with her clutch, right? But if there is something, so there is something we had a conversation about in the video we recorded today, where I should stop pinging this because it's going to be horrible for Mike. One of them comes out, and it is like it has these beautiful like deep red saddles where it's like this black border and it goes into this mahogany and it peaks into like this bright red, and in between it's all silver, and then you get to the head and it's this black head with these silver rings around the eyes and then like a silver mouth almost around the rostral scale, and it looks like it's wearing a balaclava.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, imagine you made a line of this, Ellie, and I was like, it looks like a ski mask. So imagine you called it like a SKM line. She was like, I think it would be called like bandits because they're little bandits. And like just little things like that. It doesn't have to be for any purpose other than it's a line of a thing that I want. And it's just more choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the ultimate thing of more choice. And do you want one that, like, as I describe the characteristics of my line, and perhaps in the future I breed, smashes food, low stress overall, so it can handle a lot of things, so it doesn't stress out. And again, you're going to make an animal that copes better in captivity, and what's that going to be good for? It being in a good state of positive animal welfare.
Mm-hmm.
So you're breeding them to be more adaptive and more resilient to cope with captivity in their life. Like I've got these sand snakes, these wild caught shikari, and I regret buying them. I'm like, they don't like life. They're not going to be line bred. There's like the rear fangs and like, ugh. So there's different flavors of different people, right? But a lot of people just want a nice pet. And yes, that can be a corn snake that's also been line bred to have all these amazing behavioral traits, or you can go for something crazy beautiful that is a breed of a different line of a hybrid. It doesn't really matter. And a lot of the locality stuff. One of the other things I realized was the locality stuff. If you don't have enough genetics available to you, right? Because you can have a founder effect where you have those founders come out, and if they have like a bunch of deleted Brazils and they're all het and they're like, you don't have enough heterogeneity in those founders, you can be pretty screwed from the start to begin with. So you can be years ahead, let's say it's 10 years, 50 years, 100 years. Eventually, if you don't have good enough genetics, that line will disintegrate to the point where you have to do a salvage cross.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have something that's like pure locality and like I've maintained it for 50 years, or depending on how bad the founder effect was, it could last like 5 years, 10 years. Well, not 5 years, that's like one generation. You get my point. But eventually, if it's bad, you have to do a salvage cross. And what is it then? No longer pure. So the idea of purity, it's a farce in a state. Yes, okay, a boa is not going to cross to a corn snake, and in an extent they are entirely separate. But when things are so like putty and you can go in any direction, the purity aspect is just nonsense. Like, okay, so you've got integrades, right? Can I bring up a whiteboard? Does that let me?
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
do some drawing.
yeah. Let's just see. Maybe I have to give you permission.
So here's the thing that I was thinking about. Let's bring up the pen. So let's say you have got, I don't know, population of this snake here, population of this snake here, and then you've got an integrate zone that's like this, right? And we're like, we know these are your integrades, and you can tell from the scalation that it's kind of halfway, right? But so I want this species, right? I'm going to bring it into the hobby. So I collect from here, or I collect from here. The thing is with hybrids is it can be like 80% corn, for example, and then like 20% the other thing, and then present entirely as corn. It can be the scalation, everything is perfect as it is. So even in the wild, if you collect from here and you're like, it's entirely a pure corn snake, and that's the only thing you look at when you collect from the wild, right? No one is starting a new thing and they go and getting genetic lab analysis to know the purity of what that doesn't happen. You just tell from scalation and da. But how would you know? Let's change the color. That the 80% aren't actually like that. And what you've got is a hybrid with 20% of blah, 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 blah. And you're saying it's pure and it's not. Well, that's the thing of purity. If you draw such hard lines with purity, I just think you're in for a mental headache because you're obsessing. When there's a lot of things where you can have remnant genes, right? So we humans are hybrids. We've got what, 3 different species in us now?
Mm.
So would you say, Dylan, yes or no, could be wrong, it doesn't really matter. Are we hybrids, or are we Homo sapiens with just remnant genes from past crossings?
Yeah, it's just a total definitional thing. I mean, we're Homo sapiens, but when you look at the DNA, when you look under the hood, we actually have Neanderthal and Denisovan, whatever else it is. And so
it's just remnant genes, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's the way that I see it. I'm like you could be hardcore, but I reckon these things are going through so many interglacial periods where it's all like compressed and mixed and stretched out again. Like there's going to be over here. I would be surprised if over here there isn't something from within deep in their range that doesn't have remnant genes, either from a species that is extinct now, that isn't what that is, or it's drifted over from over here, but it isn't pure anymore. So the idea of purity, and if you're like, it's got one remnant gene from somewhere else, therefore it's not pure. Good luck knowing what's pure and actually having pure. So in a sense, to me, it's just nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even hybrids in conservation, there's even like when I was taught it, the conversation about using hybrids in conservation itself was what I was taught. There's papers looking at like hybridizing crocodile, the Shinosaurus, because the hybrids actually have like better qualities for survivorship of that population. And sometimes it's really bad because you get genetic swamping and it takes it further away from what the population needs. But it's neither here nor there. So people have said like, oh, but that's just like ruining it because you're going to get genetic swamping. It's going to make them more unhealthy. I'm like, no, that's just one title of a paper you've read. And it just says that in that scenario, in that population, bringing in a hybrid that made that population less specialized and more generic weakened the population. For example, if you had like really like long-beaked birds that ate these like little seeds, and you brought in like a population of the short-beaked birds and crossed them all, and you made like generic middle-beaked birds that can't get to the seeds, that would be an example of making the population less fit because you brought in all those things to cross it too. But that could happen in reverse and make it more fit to doing that thing. Do you know what major histocompatibility complex is?
Yes, because I've learned that from you here. Can I stop your whiteboard?
Okay.
But please expand on that, because there's for sure some people that have never heard of that.
Basically, I call it MHC. So MHC dictates like immune response and is basically like your immune system, right? In a nutshell, to make it really simple. So horses, there's a paper on horses where mares can smell that a male stallion his MHC is dissimilar from hers. So basically it's an outcross for heterogeneity, right? To make it more adaptable. So she will select him as a mate and prefer him as a mate. But there was a paper on, like, I think it was a trout or some sort of fish, but in that river system they selected for MHC similar trouts because they wanted to strengthen their immune system to be specialized to the pathogens in that environment.
There's a difference between either you want an immune system that's capable of having a decent amount of protection against many different things, because if you live in an environment like humans do, we're constantly interacting. But if you happen to live in a pond, for example, where there's basically 3 pathogens that only ever exist, it would make a lot more evolutionary sense for the genetics to slowly tilt towards a very, very specialized immune system. And that's all dealt through the MHC or the MH complex, I guess. The
part of it, yeah.
Or part of it, yeah. So the breeding pairs can actually dictate how diverse or non-diverse their MH complex is based off of the goals of the population.
And that's all it is. It's like the environment either needs this and it pulls the putty this way or that way, and it shapes it to what the environment needs or what's going to be the most successful and the highest fitness. That's all it is. But in captivity, you're all the selection. So if something comes out that from being a cross is worse, cull it. And it's that's into conversation. Like, you're in control of what you put out to the world. And that brings into the whole thing of like, oh, hybrids are going to ruin it for everyone else, right?
Yes.
Do you know tessera and corn snakes?
Say that again?
Do you know tessera and corn snakes?
Yeah.
Do you know that's a hybrid?
No.
So, and I only know this from talking to hybrid people. So rather than being like elitist and drawing lines and like us and them, I just start chatting to everyone now. And now I've learned so much. It's ridiculous. So that was originally a Newport Cali King that went to like a corn snake, and then suddenly someone took that and bred it into corn snakes, took it all the way, and they claimed it was like a new gene, right? That just came from a Cali.
That's funny.
So all the corns are already hybrids, because tessera has gone to bloody everything, right? Tessera is in every 5 gene, blah 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 blah. So you can either say all the corns are hybrids, right? Or they're just corns with remnant genes from Calis.
Yeah.
But Mother Nature doesn't make any of these distinctions. She doesn't give a shit.
Yes.
Doesn't care. It's only us being like pure, which is ridiculous, because even when we talk about conservation genetics, purity, the biggest thing of like the first lesson was like, purity is a lie. Purity isn't a thing. It's just us making these like hard lines. Nature doesn't care. So these are things that only come up for me again after thinking about it years later. But all these things of like this and that and this and that, and like we're all doing the same thing. It's just that some people are stumbling towards domestication whilst subconsciously doing that, whilst consciously being like, oh, mine's a wild type, all this malarkey, right? Or stumbling towards it. And the other side is just like outright purposefully marching towards domestication. Mm-hmm. But you're both doing it. Is that one is doing it purposefully and arguably doing it more successfully than you are, right?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
We'll finish this conversation. There'll be like another 2 hours of things I could have said about this, because I have sat and thought now for so long about all the arguments against it, and I'm like, I can't outbeat it, and it annoys me because I was like, oh, I wish I could, but I just can't. So here's how I view things. Now, some of my viewers have seen this because I did this at the end of like a 4-hour podcast, so maybe everyone left by that point. But this is how I view things, right? So here's your general population. I'm just going to put like gen, and then you've got species, pure species, and then you've got even further, and you've got locality, right? And then is it like sub baskets and populations, and then you've got the morph, and then you've got the hybrids, right? Now, if you are someone that is pure species only and everything else disgusts you, right? You need to be buying from known breeders that you know and trust and that can prove lineage, right? Because lineage and lines and tracking is the most important thing, right?
Right.
But then these can also just sell to this because they're like, oh, my culls, the crap that I don't want, just sell it to the general like pet shops and the generic population, right? There's a hodgepodge of like wherever you want to see. But the locality stuff can go to the pure species stuff because it's still the species, right? But the locality stuff won't take a lot of the pure species stuff because it's not pure enough, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So that goes into itself. But what is it the locality stuff needs? Lineage data and tracking and identification of what it is. And then that can sell to that. That doesn't care. It's like, yeah, my calves can go there to the hodgepodge of pet shops and generic pets, right? The morphs can go like that. Some of the morph people will go like, oh, I found a morph in this generic population. I love that. And that will go like that. And then the morph people will take from both of these. They're like, yeah, that's got something I want. Cool. That's got something I want. Cool. And this is how things like populate and these moving. I realize it's getting messy, but this is the one I wanted to draw it as we're talking and not just show a full image because everyone's going to be like, whoa, what is that? Mm-hmm. And the hybrids, it's greedy because the hybrids will go, I love that. I love that. I love that. And then, oh, lo and behold, I love that. And that will go to here. Right. So this is what everyone complains about, that the hybrids are going into the general population and it's ruining it for everyone else.
Yeah.
But do you see what people aren't doing? If you're someone that's a purist and you're like species only or locality only, you should never be buying from the hodgepodge of the general population because there's no lineage data. It's like a random corn snake in a pet shop. And they're like, well, who did it come from? Who bred it? Don't know, mate. What's in it? Don't know, mate. Mixed corns. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So you should never be buying from that. And if you're buying from that and you're saying, well, mine's pure because it looks what I think it is and it's pure, you're doing nothing different from the general population. You're lying to yourself, which is funny because a conversation I had with someone recently, we're talking about corn snakes and there's a conversation about hybrids. And he was like, oh, well, you don't see any like Okeetees and Miami locality corn snakes anymore because the hybrids have ruined it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So do you have those? Have you been like breeding them and keeping the lines going? No, I don't have them. I would never pay for corn snakes. I'm like, okay, cool. So he would just get random corn snakes from this because it's free, right? Yeah. And he'll breed them. And then I was like, okay, cool. And he was like, well, the only corn snake that I would pay money for is probably like something like Tessera. Well, okay, so you won't pay money for, and you didn't care to invest in the locality stuff, but the thing that you would pay money for is the hybrid. I love it. So funny because if you take away and strip back all the like elitism and all that stuff and the pompousness and oh, I'm better in this and this is how I look to other people, what he really wanted was the hybrid.
Yeah, that is hilarious. Well, and it's funny because when I think about this, the snake that's just over my shoulder there, that boa, it's the first snake I ever bought. Basically, as a pet keeper, I wasn't really in the hobby. I wanted a snake, and I bought that boa specifically because the guy told me it would stay small, or he called it a, I think he just called it a leopard boa, even though it's not a leopard. Leopard is a morph, and it's not. It doesn't have that morph. So it was like, I don't know if the breeder didn't know what he was doing, or I certainly had no idea. But once I bought him and brought him home and spent, another few months getting deeper into the hobby and then starting tracing bloodlines, I realized this is actually a hybrid of a boa imperator and a boa sigma. That's the Sonoran Desert boa and just your kind of conventional Central American boa. And I had no idea. But to me, it was just a snake. Like I wanted a snake that stayed in a specific size range because of where I lived. It needed to, and it's an awesome animal. And I never and technically it wasn't a hybrid. Maybe when the crossing happened because the boa sigma was a more later kind of branch off of a species off of boa. But it's just, you realize how silly it is to be really hard and concrete with these lines, with these boundaries, I should say.
Yeah, it's just preference. At the end of the day, when you break it down, it's just preference. And if you don't want it, avoid it and go hardcore into tracking the lineage. I mean, we know the lineage of our hybrids because we want to know what percentages and we want to know what percentages we're putting out. Mm-hmm. So the hybrid people are just as invested in lineage tracking and having the records of it all as the locality and the species people. It's just different preference, different goals. But like you said, that you just had like a hobby form. That's just a hobby form boa, yeah? Hodgepodge.
Yes.
It's just this general thing. But then the general population of the vast majority of like generic people that will have a pet ball python they got from PetSmart, they don't even realize that the larger hobby just exists. They just know that you can get snakes from PetSmart.
Yes, exactly.
The hardcore hobbyist doesn't realize what the industry is like, right?
Which is most of the thing, like most of it is we're a very small fraction. There's millions of people that own reptiles that have never heard of reptile YouTube or reptile podcast. They're just out there because they went to PetSmart, they saw a bearded dragon or a ball python, and now that's their pet. And I was one of those people for like 8 years when I only had a crested gecko. That's just, I bought them and I just kept them. I never did anything else. It's just how it was.
And what's wrong with that?
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that.
So they serve a purpose. You cannot reinvest into your species projects without you selling basically your culls to this population. And they love them and cherish them, and that's fine. But you need that to achieve that.
Yeah.
Because this circle is only so big. You only buy and sell to each other so much before you just basically just swapping, right? No money is being exchanged. So for these sectors to grow, this sector needs to grow. So yes. you are reliant upon it. So to be like disgusted by it is such an oxymoron. Like, and then when you think of these, right? The Morph people were like, yeah, that's fine. Or some of them are like anti-hybrid, but then they're silly because they don't even know they're working with hybrids. But what you should do is go for, again, track it, lineage, and if you don't want it, you shouldn't be buying from it. Like, if you are like a pure species person and you want a milk snake, you shouldn't come to me and be like, I want that because it looks like a milk snake, or go to a pet shop and be like, I want that because it looks like a milk snake. You should know the lineage, the grandfathers, because people are hardcore into it if you find the right people. The market dictates, and if it's not valuable enough for someone to look after it, again, that friend that I spoke about, he didn't care enough to even own the thing that he could pay, he didn't see anymore. So it was literally just about like, I want to walk into a pet shop and see it on the shelf, and I go, well, tough titties, mate, because you didn't care enough to own it or breed it. So at that point, it's just entitlement.
Yes, yeah.
The idea of like that you want to walk and see that this is pure is just entitlement at that point. If you want pure, buy pure, track it down, look after it.
Well, maybe I'll get you to run through that exact exercise. Like, imagine if someone's listening to this and they're like, I don't want to do this. I want to be as pure as possible, even though you've really laid out a lot of the issues with that. Particularly, I think one of the main issues is if you pull an animal from the wild, you actually don't know how pure it is. It could be carrying hybrid genetics without you even realizing. But let's just say someone wanted to go about it in the most thorough way possible and keep a wild type lineage of animals in captivity. Like, if you were going to do that, what would you do? Like, would you go start with a wild caught pair? Would you have to genetic test them to see where you're at? Or like, I want you to do like the reverse of what you're talking about here. How would somebody do that? Just to highlight how kind of ridiculous it is, because that is what you would have to do in order to do the things that people say they're doing.
Well, you have to ask around. You have to get into the right rooms. You have to join Facebook groups, talk to people. And sometimes these things aren't options. Sometimes that no one's cared about it that much in the past, and hasn't got that much value financially for someone to like keep it around, right? Whether you think that that's wrong or right, it doesn't matter. That's the logistics of what's happened. So you're gonna have to ask around. You have to ask, because what we did was, I bought Cali Kings. I asked around. I asked them who they got it from. They didn't know. I go through friends. So this is like who you know, right? Went through friends who put me to someone else. And I found that the person that produced the clutch of my snakes was a person called Ryan Devaney. Then I asked Ryan who the grandparents came from, and it was this person. And then that's how you hop around and just track back, right? And the second way is finding the people that like have got it all tracked already, and being really selective. You have to be really, 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 really picky. And if you're an impatient person, then good luck, because you're gonna have to like sit around and research and trug through loads of people, finding the right things. And you basically just have to like crawl through it all and just ask around and like and search for it.
But then even then, like, North American clueberts are a great example because of how many integration zones there are and how many, subspecies, whatever. How would you know if you have a pure example of a California king or corn snake? Maybe that's a better example because of
well, they say polygenetic as well. Like, you look at how polygenetic and how much you can like just twist and move that putty in a Cali king. When we say with Mexican black king snakes, at one point they classed them as a Cali king, and now they're talking about they're actually Splendida, and that they're a species again, then they're a Cali, then they're a species again, and now they're just the color form of the desert king. And it's like, just keep on black and then line breed them, keep your line black, and just call it the line that you want to call it. Like,
black snake.
It's a thing of like, okay, let's say, okay, I'll just line line breed them back to the black thing that I called an MBK in the first place, because functionally that's what they are anyway in that example. And some of the things that you say that you haven't got, you can basically recreate. Because it's not pure in some people's minds, that's not an option. But I think once you realize that you're being silly, then the real conversation takes place, right?
Now, do you have ethical boundaries on how far you'd be willing to hybridize? I mean, like you said, we're not going to be hybridizing a boa and a colubrid, but is it more of a trial and error just to see what, there's obviously some European colubrids that could easily hybridize with a North American colubrid, I assume, but at some point, I'm sure you would hit a hybridization that may work in theory, but then you hatch out a bunch of kinked snakes or something like that. I don't know.
You just don't do it again.
Okay. So it's more
if
like
you
trial and
produce
error.
it. I mean, like it's the screening process, right? You can try something and it comes out and you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, just don't do it again. End of conversation. So things like a I don't know, a diamond python to a jungle carpet. People do it all the time in the carpet world. But if you notice that carpet pythons, a lot of them are just like a hobby form. It's a carpet python, and they just list the genes. They just list the morphs. And everyone is like, okay, cool. I've got a carpet python. I've got a zebra. What is it? A carpet python. That's acceptable too. In the same way that many things are like just a morph, and it's just lines. It's just lines. But I think the big message of this is no matter who you are, with your locality, morph, species, or a hybrid, what everyone wants and what everyone agrees upon is they want lines and they want lineage data and tracking, because everyone wants to have the information to make decisions about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. So is that what you feel that would be very important, regardless of how crazy you get with your hybrids and your mixes and you're working towards a domesticated breed? It's still the record process is so key at the transaction, like the sale.
Yeah. I mean, you do that, and then it's over to someone that wants the hybrid or doesn't. If it gets passed around, it ends up in that general pool, and it's like generic and no one knows what it is. I mean, if you're a pure person, don't buy it. But someone like you, Dylan, that's like, or someone that's just like, I just want that really funky, pretty snake, buys it, and they have it. So what?
Yeah, well, that's what happened to me. I bought a snake.
It shouldn't
and
ever enter your collection if you're that purist, because you shouldn't ever buy from that pool.
Yes, you shouldn't be going to the pet store.
Pool expecting it to be pure, and then putting no legwork in and no care into seeing any lineage data. It looks like it, so it is. And okay, you know. So the way I see it is like you're marching towards domestication. You can either be purposeful about it, and well, you can be purposeful within like own species only if you want to, or you can do hybrids. But don't buy something without lineage data if you don't want something to not be pure. I think it's very simple in that regard.
Now, how important do you think stratifying your level of importance when it comes to domestication based off of, you'd said that you guys, you're important. The thing you place the most value on is the behavior and like the ability to be a pet. How important is it that most people who work with hybrids do that? Like I'm just trying to think of somebody, because then we get back into the morph, kink spine, messed up head, buggy eye situation that just continue to perpetuate because people really want the color and they don't worry about the overall health and structure of the animal. That we have to avoid that, right?
Well, I just think everyone should be breeding animals better across the board. Like, I think you should apply some level of selection. You should be thinking about better pets. Not everything has to be aligned. Some things you can just reproduce it just to reproduce it, and then just the babies go to local shops, right? Because, for example, my MBKs, I haven't done an inbreeding to see what comes out. I just produce MBKs that make MBKs, and the local shop want MBKs because they're going to sell those MBKs to that general population that want the pet MBKs. It can be as simple as that. It doesn't have to be. But if you're like, oh, I'm doing something hardcore and you're doing lines and stuff, then take it seriously, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think can you remind us of the hybrid clutch that Ellie just produced? I think you did mention it, but I'd love for people to be reminded of exactly what it is. 25%
variable king snake, 25% Ruthen's king snake, and then 50% corn.
Okay, and
so we bought hybrids to make hybrids, basically.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
So the hybrids that Ellie bought, one was a 50% Ruthen's king snake and 50% corn. One was a 50% variable king snake and 50% corn. Behaviorally, they're great, and they eat really well. Great size as well. Sometimes you can cross things to make them smaller. Like there's loads of things you can do. But she crossed those, made those, and then the 25%, and then corn. There's all the things that will come from the heavily bred corn to come to into that cross and make really cool, funky things that can become a new domesticated breed in the future. For example, I bought a hybrid clutch. They are Imperials. And some of the things that come out of that pairing is insane. Like the Frisian cows. So if I can get a Frisian cow looking thing out and then line breed to just get like Frisian cow every time, then that is like a new breed, right?
Mm-hmm. And
Frisian cow thing.
That's a Lampropeltis hybrid, or
yeah, it's a Cali and then Pueblan.
Okay, very cool. And was there a reason? Oh no, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, was there a reason Ellie chose those two parents to begin with? Was it mostly behavior? Was it a look as well, or?
Well, looks because you saw them and then you're like, that's really cool. And then it was like, let's have a handle, let's see what they're like. They seemed okay. How are they eating? Yes, here's the information. Okay, I'll have a gamble on them. And then you take them, you see how they are. Do they meet your screening processes? Yeah, they stay here, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they do look cool. I mean, the babies look cool. The parents are beautiful.
Babies look insane.
Yeah. Has there been some variability? I know when they were just pipping that there was still some variability just off that nose, you were looking at.
So one looks exactly like Dad.
Okay, very cool.
Which is like really, really bright, really like high, like cream and orange with like the red saddles and the same sort of head as well. But there's a shot I took of this video where I was literally like open the tub and like two of them at once came out and just crawled onto my hands. And like, I don't get that with the MBKs. They're trying to bite me and tail rattle at me. Maybe that's because that's not a good line. But that, yes, that is because it's not a good line actually. But it all depends on what you're trying to do. And I think you can have. I'm doing both. I like pure species stuff and I like hybrids, and I'm doing both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can take the pure species stuff, cross it into my hybrid stuff, make hybrids out of them, and then they just carry on making pure at the same time. So people think that, like, I've had some people say like, "Oh, you've ruined it now because you've crossed it, you've tainted it." Doesn't make it not what it is just because you've allowed it to jizz. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It hasn't like morphed into a hybrid. It still is like a pure, wherever you pure, what it is. But I think of it in terms of like dogs, right? So many breeds of dogs started from taking a breed of dog, taking that line that come into that basket of breed, taking a whole different direction so you make it into a whole new breed. Exactly. And that's how things start. And like in the future, when I had that whiteboard up, the locality stuff, if it isn't healthy enough and you don't have enough heterogeneity, or there's too many of those deleted recessive alleles, that those lines are only going to become more homozygous. The homozygosity of all those lines are going to increase with time, right? And a lot of them will genetically disintegrate to the point we have to outcross. You either have to abandon it and say that was nice, we had that in the past, it's gone now, because it will start failing to reproduce, or they'll just die off, or you have to outcross. And then what was the point from the start?
Yes. Yeah. It's like you have to ask yourself, what are we valuing here? Are we valuing this like theoretical locality that's slowly going to degrade in genetics over time because there's not enough of a gene pool to be part of it? Or are we going to value the health of the animal and something that looks like the locality in practice?
Yeah. I mean, because it's not always the case. There could be the locality people that have that line, but it's not even the locality. It's just a line. Like, take away all those baskets. It's just all lines. It's just all lines. Like the chicken people, they will have their own lines for their own yards, right? And I'm like, well, mine looks like this. I like this because it looks like this. Yes, you have chicken breeds, but they also just have like a line. Do you have a name for the line? No, it's just my line that I keep here. It looks like this. It's got the conformation, the body conformation that I want. It's got this and this and this. But there's people that literally will like chuck their chickens out into the forest that's in their yard. They'll come back covered in like the ticks and the mites. And if they came, this is hardcore. I'm not sure this is my vibe, but they'd come back. If they come back infested with parasites, and then eventually they would be like immune or at least highly resistant to the parasites. Would come back and have none on them.
Mm.
And what's happening there? Because there's some sort of response, whether that is like they don't taste nice to the mites, or their blood is slightly like different for them, or the skin gets, there'll be something happens, whether it's like the skin gets thicker or this and that. Then what someone will do when they've got their line is they'll actually go buy one of the person's lines that have that immunity and cross it into their own line. So
Right.
food production actually took one of those lines and put it into the food stuff because it made them so good at being immune to these parasites and stuff. So many different things of like shifting and changing. It's just lines. Everyone else just views it as just lines and breeds, but reptiles is like, nah, it's different.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think when we think of domestication, there's an issue with because like chickens, for example, have been around forever. And I think it's hard for us to comprehend how crazy it is to have a domesticated group of birds, right? Chickens are not the only ones that are domesticated, but you have an animal like the mammals. It makes more sense, the jobs are more clear. The pulling, the dog, having a dog pack surrounding your tribe is obviously very beneficial, but to start domesticating chickens is kind of a remarkable thing, and that's very close to reptiles, evolutionary speaking. So because we've had chickens around for our eternity, for most people, for everybody listening, chickens have always been a domesticated bird. It's hard for us to really conceptualize how wild that is, how insane that is. It's just a random wild jungle fowl that's now everywhere.
And the hybrids.
And they're hybrids. Yeah. 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 You have an
So
episode about chickens with a breeder who really focuses on that, and it was fascinating.
It's like a 4-hour thing. It's so interesting. I mean, like, why do we make those selections? Okay, you'd have things called land races where your village has like a line of chickens that really suits the pathogens around that village or the situation in that village. Maybe it's muddy, so they have like longer legs with less feathers on, so they don't get like diseases or whatever scenario. You'd have like these different forms that function, or you have like cattle or domestic like ruminants that would be better for mountainsides because where you live in Wales or whatever does better on a mountainside, so it's better for where you live. Why do we make like different domestic breeds of pigeon? Just sometimes it's just because we want to.
Yeah.
And as long as they are healthier for it, better pets for it, the lowest threshold, enjoy being a pet more, enjoy being in your company more, I'd rather have the hybrid that wants to crawl out onto my hand than the pure shit flicking thing that someone else made. I was listening to a podcast recently. So you set me off on this topic. I'm like, blah, 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 blah. What were you going to say?
No, go. I wasn't even going to say anything. I was just laughing.
I was listening to a podcast. There was a podcast talking about like the Mex complex. I think it was Leonis they were talking about. And they were talking about like, oh yeah, and you could tell which ones aren't pure because the ones out west in Texas, there's eat straight away off the bat the babies, and that means that they've crossed them. So don't ever buy from them because they're not pure. And I'm like, so what I'm hearing is go to Tesco's and go to Texas because that's the ones I want. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Why would you want a line that is like shit?
Yeah,
I realize I'm swearing a lot on your podcast. I'm gonna bleep myself, I think.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So, what do you think? Like, is this the future? Is this the next kind of phase of herpetoculture? Is this kind of embracing this more of a breed mentality, for lack of a better word?
We already are. Like,
yeah.
I don't even need to answer it. You just look at the hobby. We're already doing it. Domestication is inevitable. Breeds are already starting to form, whether it's the designer. Look at the leopard gecko. The leopard gecko is a hybrid. Do we all hate our generic leopard gecko, or do we just love them because we love leopard geckos? And then at the same time, there are those people that keep in the pure little subspecies and they're just doing their thing, right? And then we have all these different like these morphs and these buckets, and people are breeding lines for different like head conformity or different behavioral traits. Like Dragoon Gecko was just talking about like them being gentle breeders.
Mm-hmm.
And you're getting breeds forming. You're just not putting the label of breed on it. Or Heather Moy at Fairy Tale Dragons, she talks about like she's doing hybrids with the her bearded dragons are hybrids. When bearded dragons first came into the US, because they went to the US before they came into Europe, they were all just listed as bearded dragons. So Viticeps and Barbata crossed. So everything we've got is a hybrid dragon anyway. But is it a hybrid, or is it just a Viticeps with remnant Barbata genes? And at the end of the day, when it comes to like pets and making them better and just having different lines that do different things, I've realized I don't think it matters.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Because I'm not a conservationist. No one's knocking on my door for my MBKs for a re-release program. They'll get wild caught and start from scratch. Yes, okay, if there's nothing left in the world, they'll come to the hobby, but they'll go to the zoos first. But in reality, I'm keeping least concerned species that I'm just doing my thing. No one's knocking on my door saying, "Hey, do you want to get involved in conservation?" I'm just someone that's working with my pets in a pet industry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where when you actually start to look at how complicated it is, you realize it's impossible to get your arms around and control the situation because of how fluid genetics are in general. Like you said, there's the amount of gray and integration zone areas there are in the wild make it so we are all just hybrids of species that are similar to us along the way. That's just how it works. So for you personally, do you have, I don't know, maybe you're not comfortable talking about it, you don't want to share about it yet, but do you have some hybrid projects in mind that you want to tackle?
I want to make breeds. So
Mm.
I want to work towards, because you have to have a lot of holdbacks, right? So you have to have a lot of animals, but I want to do it in vivariums. That's going to be difficult. So I'm willing to pick like one, and I have got something in mind. I'm not going to share it. It's going to be one of those things in like 15 years' time. I'm like, hey, look what I've done. Um, and then you come up with these breeds, and then we start talking about like breed registries, and that comes into like rain or the things that he was talking about. Everyone is talking about it, but it's these little individual conversations and arrows. But the holistic thing is that we're racing towards domestication, and we're talking about lines, and we're talking about breeds, like. And we're talking about things becoming better and how do you establish things to make them better for captivity. We're all talking about domestication. But then some
Yes.
people are talking about domestication whilst being domestication. Just you're just stumbling in the dark towards it. Then
Yeah.
whether you like it or not.
Well, one of the things recently, because you're every reptile keeper is always in the market for a new reptile, and I was just starting to kind of compile a list of personally what I'd want from my next snake, for example. And for me, like I want a smaller size, I like very particular color. Like I really like the striping of a milk snake or something along those lines. There's different things that come into play, and that's kind of what a dog breed gives you, right? Okay, you want a medium-sized dog. Do you want it to shed? Yes or no? Or do you care about shedding? Yes or no? Do you want them to be easy to train, or are you happy to work with something that's maybe higher energy but harder to train? There are so many different things that allow you to funnel your way down to like 3 different dog breeds that you'll now go out and go interact with them and see which ones you like. And I think that's we kind of have that in the hobby just by virtue of having so many different species, but it's not as clinical as it would be with a breed, because you would know these snakes are red and yellow striped. They get 3 feet long. They're incredibly great eaters, and they're very calm and relaxed in captivity. Like you're not going to get that from a specific species. You'd only get that from somebody who's actually whittled down the genetics to produce that thing.
Yeah. I mean, people have just different wants and desires, and we can all have our cake and eat it. It's just that if you want purity, if you're chasing purity, which I don't think exists, you're gonna have to work harder for it.
What about husbandry? Like, do you think about that? I mean, this is something because I often am overly analytical about things. I'm like, okay, 50% corn and 50%, California, whatever, like something that's from an arid part of the United States. Like, how do you approach husbandry when you are dealing with 2 species that have, or drastic different living conditions in the wild?
I think if you can't figure out, you shouldn't be doing it. Because
Yeah. Okay.
to me, I think it's like intuitive. Like, for example, let's say I took my diamond python and crossed it to my ball python, right? So my ball python actually goes down to like 50 degrees in the winter at night, and she'll like have a basking spot. So I like do things like have a hot basking spot, cold nights. Whereas exactly the same thing as what I would do with the diamond. So you would make a hybrid, and you would look at all the parameters and find the sort of center point, and then shoot for that, right? And then you just watch. Let's say I'm like
Yes.
humidity, I'm not sure. Okay, I'll give it a humid hide. Is it like clinging to that humid hide for dear life? Okay, I'll spray the rest of the enclosure and bump it up a bit. Is it coming out more using its enclosure a bit more holistically? Okay, probably wants a bit more humidity. And then over time, what you get is like later generational stabilization. And you basically like gear your line towards a certain preference or style of husbandry. So first of all, you got to figure it out. And then second of all, you gear them towards being that adaptable, that is what you care for them. So if you're talking about a breed, by the time you get to a breed, you'll have a care sheet of saying, this is how you look after the breed.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well,
It's just the putty, isn't it? It's just the putty.
yes. Yeah. It's really fascinating, and it's one of those things where it really does let people it has a like a visceral or a knee jerk reaction to many people, and even like Liam 2021 or 22 would be fired up by this conversation.
Repulsed by this conversation.
You'd be pacing in your room right now.
Yeah, but that's because I accepted what people said to me, and I was like, yeah, let's jump on the bandwagon. This is the response we're supposed to have. This is the emotional response we're supposed to have. But then when you actually went off the deep end in research, looking at the textbooks and stuff, none of it matters. None of it matters. Yeah. And that's not like a pessimistic thing. That's an optimistic thing. Like if I want to start off a line of this generic snake, I could tap into that generic pool that I drew earlier because I'm like, this, and this I want out of it. And then it's going to take it in this direction. I don't really know what it is, but I know what I want it to look like. Does it come in that direction? No, cut it out, start again. And then you can have this thing of like, you take it in this direction, this line, and like 15 years in the future, I've got this snake. And what is it? Well, let's say you called it, I don't know, bobcats, random name. You're like, well, what's in it? It's a bobcat. What is it? It's a bobcat. What's the care like? The care sheet for the bobcat. Mm-hmm. Most people wouldn't know where most dog breeds came from anyway. The hardcore breeders that are into the culture and history of breeding, yes, they would. But if I said to you, okay, you want a Labrador? They're like, okay, we'll go Google how to look after a Labrador.
Yes.
You're not asking them, well, what's the all the different lines and the shifting, changing things for like all those years ago that made a Labrador. You just what? You just know how to look after a Labrador.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Same like a cockapoo, like things like that. Everyone's like, oh, that's not a thing. It's just a mongrel. It's just a mup. I'm like, that is. Give it how many years that a cockapoo will just be a cockapoo.
Yeah, it'll be a stable line of dogs.
That's how it all works.
Like yeah. You started down this path well over a year ago. Like this is not something that you just figured out last week and then you just immediately paired a hybrid. You and Ellie paired some hybrids together. And now you've produced like this started a long time ago for you and Ellie, just kind of thinking about this way.
Daily obsessive thinking and conversations between the two of us and stuff. And then like I listen to like goldfish podcasts, breeding podcasts, chicken podcasts. I'm just like listening to all of it. I don't even know what they're talking about. They're like, oh, it's this and this, but this only came from this and this and this and this. I'm like, I don't know what breed you're talking about, but I understand the concept you're talking about, and I find it really fascinating. So I'm like pulling things from outside of herpetoculture because honestly, herpetoculture is so far behind to understanding breeding to everything else. Even that conversation of doing a test pairing and inbreeding your pair straight away, or at least from the F1s, doing a back cross to see what even comes out, to see whether you've got a healthy genetics to start with or not. We don't even do that. We don't even talk about that in herpetoculture. That's how far behind we are. Like they call it a BC1 generation, the back cross one. No one talks about BC1 when they talk about it's like F1, F2, like very basic. Like so there's so much to come. Like the ceiling is here, and everyone thinks we've met it. And the way that I describe it is, people don't even know the chasm space that's yet to come past that ceiling. We always talk about like, what's the thing that we think is the only thing left to do is like establish a new species. Okay, establish a new species. And we praise that, right? But it's like, okay, so you're expanding, but where's the depth? And the depth comes from, I think the future is domestication, whether or not you want that to include hybrids. And I guarantee most of you are working with hybrids anyway. If you're a purist and you're talking about what you would define as a hybrid, I reckon most of you have got hybrids. If you're a corn snake person that's a purist and you've got tessera, sorry to let you know, but they're hybrids. Like, or are they corn snakes with just remnant genes? You could tell yourself that, maybe sleep better at night. But I see it as, okay, so you establish a new species, you keep a vast eclectic collection. I'm just doing, maybe I've got like a pair or a few pairs and just producing them and selling them. I'm doing simple things with like complex things, with like these wild caught things, or I'm trying to get this thing to eat a frog. Okay, simple things, a single pairing of a complex thing. Or you can do a complex thing and establish new breeds and lines and basically create something out of scratch out of simple things. Things that we already know how to look after and how we can take it even further to make them succeed even more under human care.
Yeah.
And we think the hobby is under attack. This is the ultimate defense of like, well, they're domesticated now and they can't go back to the wild. That's a domestic breed, mate.
Exactly. You're going to release your poodle back into the wild. That sort of thinking, like it's not, you know, a horse.
Well, it's only reptiles that get the dramatic attacking. Like they tend to leave the other cultures alone. No one's
because they are so obviously
about goldfish.
Yeah, it's exactly because they are so obviously domesticated. I mean, it's a human pet. It's not a wild animal, and that's sort of. It goes without saying from every other species of animal in our care, and reptiles definitely are the opposite of that.
And what's the first thing we go to grab when we talk about as defense to the argument? The domesticated, mate. Domestic. No, corn snakes aren't wildlife. Because the thing they say is wildlife.
Right.
You're taking wildlife. No, it's like how many generations in now? It's domesticated. So we go to grab that domestication as a battering ram as defense. But so many people say that, and then you start talking about like, okay, someone else over there is like purposely racing towards domestication. It's their passion. Dirty.
Yeah.
You were just talking about domestication.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I think it totally is. And especially if you can visually tell that it's not a wild animal. I mean, I think, like I said, the goldfish is a good example. A fancy goldfish with long flowing fins, everybody knows that you're not going to find that in the wild. And I think for the non-reptile or non-goldfish keeper, they recognize that immediately and go, well, no, that's a pet goldfish. You got that from PetSmart. You're not 100%. Poaching from the wild. Where ours are coming in freaking bags off a boat, you know.
Yeah, you got some pink snake that looks like candy. Like, yeah, that's a wild snake.
Exactly. You know, that's a domesticated snake. It didn't come off of the back end of a truck, which lots of our animals unfortunately do. But yeah, this is a fascinating topic. Like you said, it's going to open a giant can of worms. So we'll see what happens with that. Is there any other points you want to make before we wrap it up? Like we've already been talking for 2 hours. Like you said, there's probably another 2 hours to go, but maybe we'll do another one in the future as well on this topic. But is there anything that's just sort of low hanging fruit that you want to mention?
I'm not pretending to have all the answers. All I'm talking about how my opinion has changed after researching breeding from an outside of herpetoculture perspective and the history of domestication. I'm not saying that like everyone is doing it poorly or everyone's crap. I'm just saying that this is my opinion now, because the whole point of the conversation that we had was like how I was like so hardcore, like morphs disgust me, and like locality and purism. Like I would say I was quite extreme because of the circles that I was in, the cult I was in, shall we say. And as I've thought about it, and this is the conversation about how I've like gone through that journey, right? So don't view it as like an attack because you think that way. I'm just like, maybe some of these things you'd be like that, even though that annoys me at the moment, the emotional response is like that pisses me off. It does make sense. Because that's how I felt when I first started getting things that like came up for me, and I was like, I can't argue against it, but I don't like it. And then like, here we are.
The inconvenient truths. You're like, that does make a lot of sense, but I wish it wasn't that way. But like you said, there's reasons to do this. The domestication piece for defending our own rights is great. The fact of making these animals better for captivity is an actual ethical stance, making sure that we're breeding animals that are happy to be in an enclosure and not pacing and nose rubbing and all the different things. You know, there are so many positive check marks to say we're domesticate, or why you should focus on domestication, not excluding the fact that everybody is working towards domestication, whether you like it or not. So are you going to blindly participate, or are you going to actually engage in it intentionally and hopefully have something good in the end rather than just random? Well,
yeah. I think the positive thing to end it on is no matter whether you like hybrids, locality, or species, or whatever line you're working with, is that everyone wants lineage tracking, and because everyone cares about that to make their own decisions about their own hobby. And if you don't have lineage tracking and you want to be pure about it, don't buy it.
Yeah. I think that's a great way to wrap up. And this is like I said, it's a controversial topic in the extent that there's not enough people talking about it, and not enough people talking about it in a clear way to make us realize that if you're against hybridization, you're probably already participating. You just don't realize. And I think that's a really important rule. And just tilting the entire population of reptiles in captivity to be better pets is something that I think is foundational or fundamental in what we should be striving to do. So I'm super excited about this. I think it's fun watching that people can go, well, maybe I'll get you to plug your channels in a second, but they can kind of follow some of those hybridization projects along with you guys as you put some videos out. And I'm excited to see where these things go. So can you let everybody know where they can follow that journey for you and Ellie?
You can find it on Reptiles and Research. The video on the hybrids is coming on Reptiles and Research. Ellie has her own YouTube account called Hills Herpetiles. I'm sure she'll post lots about her hybrids on there. And Instagram, it's all Reptiles and Research. I mean, there is only one person I think that's using Reptiles and Research, so I think you find it.
Okay, awesome. Well, Liam, thank you very much for being here and being on the show, and thank you for editing the show. And then you'll have fun having to re-listen to yourself talk and edit this one as well. So thank you for.
I know, right? I think I'm your first guest that's getting an appearance fee.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're getting paid to be here. So yeah, it's awesome this is a great conversation. So I thank you very much for being here.
No worries. I really enjoy it. I mean, you can't stop me from talking about it. So.
Yeah, we'll do another one on this topic. All right, that is the end of that episode. Liam, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. And of course, thank you for editing the show and continuing to be a part of the Animals at Home podcast behind the scenes, but also joining me and discussing this topic. Like I said, it's probably one of the more controversial topics that we've talked about on the podcast. And I'm very curious to see how the listeners respond to it. But thank you for breaking it down for us. Listeners, what are your thoughts? Are we participating in domestication unwillingly no matter what? Or is it something that we have to engage in intentionally? Or is it possible that reptiles cannot be domesticated at all? I mean, I don't think, hopefully after listening to that episode, you don't think that, but it's definitely a can of worms to say the least. And I'm very excited that we were able to have this conversation today. And it's an interesting discussion about where herpetoculture is going in the future. So if you enjoyed the podcast, thank you for listening. If you want to support the show, you can head to patreon.ca/animalsathome or just share the show on social media, Instagram, Facebook, anywhere is a huge help. And you can also head to animalsathome.ca/shop and check yourself out a shirt or a sweater. $5 does get automatically donated to the Amazon Rainforest Conservancy. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and I'll catch you in the next episode.